Wait a minute, did y'all swap? Is that what you're saying? Because now she's in. That's not gonna work. I want to be able to. Really quick, and yep, he left me way over here.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's 4:30. It's called the meeting, our budget workshop for July the 8th. It's 4:30 p.m. We'll call to order now. Please for quorum check.
Mayor Pro Tem Fitzpatrick. Here. Councilmember Goldby.
Here.
Councilmember Putt. Here. Councilmember Revolve.
Here.
Councilmember Shelby.
Here.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. I'll do the invocation tonight and then the pledge, but if you all stand. We'll take about just a few moments, though, for a moment of silence for our neighbors that have devastating flooding in memory. Heavenly Father, in this time of devastation and loss, we lift up the people of Texas who are suffering from the floods. We pray for those who have lost loved ones, homes, and hope. Wrap them in your comfort and peace. Strengthen the hands of first responders, rescue team, and neighbors helping neighbors. Bring the healing to the injured, shelter to the displaced, and calm to the storm. Let passion rise stronger than the waters, and may communities unite in love and resilience. Hold Texas in your mercy, and guide the path to restoration. Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. First off is citizens to be heard. I only have one individual signed up, and that's Mr. Ken Mintz. If you'd like to take there.
My name is Ken Metz. I live at 13410 Adonis. Recently sent you all an email about some audits that I reviewed the last 8 years. And I want to first clarify that I wasn't implying any deceit on part of the city on the issue that I'm bringing up. But in the last 8 audits, the audits have said that the general fund has exceeded revenues from its expenses. And 6 of those years, it's been over $1 million. So you say, I need $10 million, you get $10 million, you spend 9. Oh, good, I got $1 million left over, but who pays for that $1 million? I think part of that comes from property owners. So over the last 8 fiscal years, the general fund budget has been over budgeted by about $11 million. So on a $20 million budget, 6 of those years over $1 million a year. I'm not saying that anybody's trying to do anything under the table or deceitful. I'm just saying, you have a budget process and a $19-20 million budget, you got that much left over in the year, maybe you want to review the budget process. The other issue I have is the golf course. Drove by there today, one city dump truck, a grader, 2 other city trucks, and they were lifting the sand pits and other things from the golf course. I went after the flooding. City trucks and stuff were down there at the golf course for about a week. I don't know if it's correct or not, but I was under the impression that the city can't provide support to the golf course without reimbursement. So I'm just asking that maybe during this budget process, if that support is supposed to be reimbursed, that it be calculated in the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mitz. There's no other people signed up, so we'll close off the citizens to be heard, and we'll go into the purpose of the meeting, which is to present and discuss the proposed FY 2026 budget. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a brief overview for the evening. So we're going to go ahead, like we always do, start out with our water, wastewater, and stormwater rate update for you. After that, we will move into just some general overview of what came out of our discussions with each of you and what we've reduced to deferred or removed from the budget based on your comments and feedback. And then we'll go into the general fund overall. After that, we'll take a break. We'll come back and briefly look at special revenues, mostly just by name. And then we'll do utility and golf and stormwater after that. So that's what we have. So Mayor, I'll just ask that if it looks like we're going on too long and you feel like people need a little potty break, just let us know and we'll accommodate.
I have the person that tells me when he needs to go right here.
We appreciate you on that. So the first thing we have is Grady Reed. He is our utility, sewer, and stormwater rate consultant. And so he meets with staff throughout the year to look at where we are within our budget and within our fund balance for those and where we think the projects need to go into the future. So I'm going to turn it over to him and let what I would declare as very good news for the city of Universal City and the residents as well. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to go relatively quick because, as the city manager said, this is really, it's hard to kind of get any better than what I'm presenting tonight. But just to give you a little bit of background and not to take anything away from your future discussions on the budget. But for the water utility, we do have increased expenses. Those are associated with purchasing and for groundwater rights. As the city is moving forward, it is my understanding that is a priority for the city to try to purchase these additional rights so that water is there during times of drought and to purchase those rights while those rights are still available for purchase. We do have 2 water tanks that are to be repainted. Those are associated with plants number 8 and 9. And we have assumed that those funds will come from the utility fund balance and cellular water tank revenue. So a combination of funding sources for those projects. We also do have some funds budgeted for other general water tank repairs in the future. And then as we have typically done in the past, we do have other money in the CIP budget for other water rehab projects as we go. And we generally try to increase that every year as projects tend to get more and more expensive as we go forward in time. And also on the water side, there is a debt issue from 2012 that is retired in this current fiscal year, so that kind of frees up, if you will, some revenue that can be used. And that debt will be replaced by a series 2026 debt payments, which will begin next fiscal year. Those payments will be about $530,000. The debt you're retiring is $360,000. So there's about a $200,000 or so difference there. We've assigned half of that debt, that 2026 debt, to water. The other half is assigned to wastewater. Other than that, and that debt in 2026, that is associated with the public works yard improvements. Outside of that debt, we do have no additional debt planned during the 5-year planning period. So all of the other projects that we have for water and wastewater, we're assuming that those are going to be funded out of the utility fund balance. So switching gears a little bit to wastewater, we did get Sarah's information, and so all of that is in our rate model. The residential charges are increasing by about 5.2%. That's generally in line with what they had told us it would be last year. And we're assuming just for future years that those are going to continue to increase by about 5% a year. The commercial rates are increasing for Sarah about 2.3%. And then we do have future rate increases are modeled at 5%. Really don't know if they'll be 5% or something less than that. And if we look in the past, like then the commercial side has been a little bit lower than residential. But just be a little bit conservative with future projections. We're assuming a 5% rate increase from Sarah to commercial rates as well. So all in all, Sarah treatment expenses are expected to increase by about $410,000 throughout the planning period, or that's about a 24% increase. And I just spend a little bit of time on your. I know every time I'm here, I spend a little bit of time on your treatment charges for wastewater. But those are your two biggest line items in your wastewater budget. And so I don't want to say that they drive 100% rate increases on the wastewater side, but there's certainly a component of rate increases on the wastewater side. On the CCMA side for wholesale treatment, their treatment expenses entirely, not their rates, and this is over the entire planning period, are expected to increase around 10%. Again, that's not next year, that's spread out over 5 years. And that increase is really due in part both to rate increases and growth in customers. Their rate increases are actually only about 2% a year as we have modeled, and that's kind of in line with where they've been in the past as well. So very similar to water, we do look at CIP projects. We do have money in this upcoming year for wastewater rehab projects of $62,600. And then that decreases to $315,000 in 2027. And then we increase that again to $365,000 by the time we get to 2030. So there, and the remaining portion, like I said before, of that public works debt service that's associated, the debt that was just issued or is going to be issued, is assigned to wastewater whenever that payment begins. So this just very quickly summarizes the projects. Again, some tank repaintings, tank number 9, associated with plant number 9 in 2026. We do have that being cash funded. And again, that's we say cash funded, and that's a portion of both fund balance as well as cellular tank revenue. There's people that rent basically your space on top of your towers for their purposes. And so that revenue that comes in is generally diverted to doing water tank repairs and maintenance. Other water tank repaintings in the future, and then you can see there the line items that we have for water rehab and wastewater rehab projects as well. So rate changes, we're not recommending any changes to water or wastewater rates in this upcoming year. The utility fund balance is a little bit higher than anticipated. And I think that's really a factor of over the last couple of years. I think our rate model has been biased to producing lower rate revenues than what the city is actually bringing in. We don't necessarily see that on the wastewater side, but certainly on the water side. And so this year we have worked as well during this updating process to go in, look at what those biases are, and try to take some of those biases out of the rate model so that the hope is that we're getting closer to projecting your actual revenue within the rate model, if that makes sense. And obviously that's hard to do because we're projecting revenue for next fiscal year, and certainly your water revenue is very dependent on weather, and we never know what the weather is going to be like. We try to plan for a quote-unquote average year, but there's not necessarily an average year. It seems like in Central Texas we're either incredibly hot and in drought conditions, or this summer we're cooler than normal, and obviously much wetter than normal. But we are trying to, as we go through the rate model process, we are trying to take those biases out, just so that we're getting a little bit closer to your actual rate revenue. And that is something that we'll continue to monitor throughout the year, and then as we go through updating the rate model next year. I mean, we didn't necessarily want to take all that bias out in 1 year and overshoot it. So again, that's just kind of something that we're gonna continue to work on. And I always kind of asterisk this with say future rate increases are still likely going to be needed. And we typically think those are going to be somewhere between 2 and 4% as we move forward. So again, if we look at the combined water and wastewater fund, the bars are expenses, the dashed line is revenue coming in. And so basically for 26 through about 2028, you're basically deficit spending, if you will. And you can do that again because your fund balance is adequate. It's above where it needs to be. And And so the idea is that we would use some of that fund balance to either forego rate increases this year or perhaps limit rate increases in the short term. And then by the time we get to 2029 and 2030, you can't really continue to deficit spend at that point because you start hitting your reserve targets. And so we have to make sure that our reserves are adequate. That's why sometimes I always get asked, well, if we have excess reserves, then why do we still have some rate increases planned in there? And that's simply why, is because we don't want to have a larger rate increase all in 1 year. We try to spread those out and slowly build that revenue back up to where it needs to be so that the two converge in kind of an organized fashion, if you will. So this just kind of shows that your debt service coverage there on the right and your operating reserves on the left. And again, you can see typically we set the operating reserve target is set at 6 months. You're well above that right now. We're projecting that you're somewhere right around 8 months worth of reserves. And again, we're trying to spend that down as we go, but we want to do that in a controlled manner. The example that I always use is with your reserve fund or with your reserve balance. You can kind of imagine a ball rolling down that dashed line, and the steeper we make that line, the more momentum that ball is going to have when it gets to the bottom. So we don't want to pull down that fund balance too fast because that creates a lot of momentum, and in order to stop that ball rolling down, you basically have to have a very large rate increase. And so we're trying to pull that fund balance down slowly through time. So if we switch to stormwater real quick, the last rate increase on the stormwater side was in 2023. Since that time, expenses have generally declined. There's been some changes in the budgetary process on the stormwater and how certain costs are allocated to stormwater, as well as there was a line item expense for vehicle leases, and that has expired. And there are also reduced engineering expenses. So overall, the stormwater budget has typically gone down a little bit these last few years. And so what we are modeling is that a portion of those funds are now being used for capital projects instead of O&M projects, certainly in 2026 and 2027, in which we have higher capital expenditures shown now than what we did this time last year. And so you can see in 2026 projects associated with Cibolo Creek, the property itself, and then brush clearing, as well as Oak Meadows drainage system. It's going to be a longer term stormwater project. So rate changes, none are recommended for this upcoming fiscal year. That's in line with the recommendation from last year's study. We weren't projecting any stormwater rate increases, and that still holds true. Again, I don't think you're necessarily going to be able to continue to do that forever because obviously costs go up, both O&M costs, as well as perhaps some capital projects. And again, here we kind of see the bars represent the expenditures on the stormwater side. We see a lot more variability in stormwater expenditures, and the blue at the bottom is your operating expenditures. Those typically stay pretty consistent from year to year, so that's things like salaries and those types of things that are typically controlled more by a rate of inflation as you do raises and those types of things. And then the green bars at the top, which is really the majority of your stormwater budget, is cash funded capital. Again, just like we're doing on water and wastewater, we're assuming that all of these projects are being cash funded, so this utility is not taking on any additional debt over the planning period, which is generally a good thing. But those cash funded expenditures on the stormwater side, they do tend to vary a little bit from year to year. Again, so we're trying to hit our revenue kind of somewhere in the middle. And again, just like we're doing on water and wastewater, you do have adequate fund balance to fund all these projects. And so we are deficit spending a little bit on the stormwater side as well, as we move towards our operating target, or our operating reserve target there. Different from water and wastewater, the reserve target for stormwater is only 3 months instead of 6. And that is typically just because with the water and wastewater utility, you see a lot more year-to-year variability. Certainly, again, on the water side, as we discussed, since that's always based around weather. And so we do want to make sure that we carry a little bit more of a cushion and the water and wastewater utility, because if we do have a wet summer, then a lot of your water revenue is going to go away. Summertime is Christmas time for the water utility. And so if all of that revenue goes away, we want to make sure that we have a little bit more cushion there. The same is not true for the stormwater fund. This is very predictable revenue. It's not based on revenue. We have a really good idea what your stormwater revenue is going to be year to year. So we can have a little bit lower fund balance there. Typically this is the 3 months. That's just to kind of deal with anything that happens out of the ordinary. If we have catastrophic flooding or something like that, and we need additional funds on hand to pay for that. This does show that your fund balance kicks up there again in 2030. I'm sure that Randy can find projects to fill that in if needed by the time we get to that year. So again, overall, that we're not recommending any rate increases for any of the water, wastewater, or stormwater utilities. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those at this time.
Wishes? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Grady. Thank you, Mayor. When we get to the, after the break, we'll go a little bit more diver deep into the utility funds in terms of revenue and expenditures. So you'll see that coming. And just as you know, once we have this discussion, we typically need to bring ordinances back to you that indicate what the pricing is going to be. Obviously, they won't have any change, but we'll probably keep all our ordinances up to date and bring back to you and have you reapprove the pricing that we already have in place so that we're always up to date on the ordinances. So if you see it on an ordinance, don't freak out, it's going to be the same. All right. With that, it is time to move into our draft proposed budget workshop for all of the other particular funds that we have in the city. So Ms. Green is going to be doing some presentations. I'll jump in when she needs me, which probably will be never. And again, if you have questions, feel free to raise your hand, and then if the mayor doesn't see you, I'll ask him to acknowledge you.
Good evening, Mayor. Good afternoon, Council, Mayor. Really, first I wanted to thank staff because they worked really, really hard to help us get the budget to where it is right now. And thank you all for meeting with us one-on-one because it does help us understand what new bills needed through the constituents for the city. Can you change this? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So the proposed budget includes a cost of living adjustment for existing staff. There's no additional staff being requested. The general fund budget, after meeting one-on-one with the council members, we have taken the space needs assessment and deferred it to a future year. The Summit Park and Skate Park planning for $90,000 has also been deferred. Our oil and lubricants line item has been reduced to $30,000. And the Bursa Lift bucket truck for $180,000, we're not going to move forward with that. We think if we need it, we can rent it. Or I know Randy already has some way that he has it set up to do that. The next slide. The fire department utility vehicle was estimated for $90,000 for this coming fiscal year. The fire department is deferring that for a future year and have determined that they could use a smaller vehicle and saving a little bit of money there, making it $70,000. We do have the fire department's Opticon preemptive system, which is $55,000 annually, and it has a 10-year contract with it. We're deferring it, but I do know that the fire department is working to see if there's a way that they can get that cost down so that maybe we can find a way to fund it into the new fiscal year with a budget amendment in the future. General services, electronic detour signs for $42,000 has been discarded. Now, I know you all know, but just in case the public don't know, we have 15 departments within the general fund. I can read them all for you. City Council Administration, Government Services, Human Resources, Finance, Municipal Court, Juvenile Case Manager, General Services, Parks and Rec, Police, Fire, Vehicle Maintenance, Animal Shelter, Library, and then we also have the non-departmental, which includes those departments within this building, simply because it's hard to say that this department used this amount of electricity when it could have actually been the finance department, for instance. So we don't want to charge PD for the electricity could be also be charged to for other departments. So we've chosen to move all those things into a non-departmental. So the general fund, our projected revenue is $20,532,029. Tax revenue represents approximately 78% of our general fund budget. That includes the ad valorem, which is property tax, sales tax, franchise fees, and then we are taking $1 million from the venue tax and placing it into the general fund to be used to offset part of the cost for our parks expenses. The general fund expenditures are listed here by department, and as you can see, public works, fire, and the police department are 70% of the general fund. So effectively, because we receive 78% of our revenues from the taxes, they're paying for those services, public works, fire, and PD. Then you have the 8% that's left over that covers most of the other departments, and then the other revenues that we receive, for instance, through fees and other things, cover the rest of the departments. Our capital improvements scheduled for fiscal year 26 are going to be Churchwood, Crosswood Drive, Gamblewood, Inkswood, Longswood, Medicine Rock, Old Converse Road, Persia Drive, Travis Drive, and West Wright at the 600 block. We'll also be doing some CDPG improvements to the streets, and we have revenue that comes in to cover a portion of that, and then our annual alley reconstruction is being funded as well. So our debt services, our revenue needed for debt services for this next fiscal year is $2,167,631. Estimated interest, given what the interest rates are right now, we're anticipating $53,500. The street bonds that are being covered, or the street bonds that are being paid through the ad valorem are listed here. We have our 2016 go bond, 2022 go bond, and 2023 go bond. Those are all straight bonds. And then we also have the library bond, which is the 214 general obligation.
We can stop right here. So I want to go back one slide when we were talking about the 2023 street road construction projects and the projects that are included in that. We are, after we get through this budget season, we will start working with our financial advisor, Victor Roga, to start preparing for the next $6 million of bond issuances. So we anticipate that that would be happening in our 2027 budget. So we'll, at that point, should have adequate time to figure out what the debt service would be and a combined O&M and debt service would be for council consideration when it comes time to issue those bonds. And I believe the street bond packages have remained the same.
Yes.
Yes. So if maybe we, before we decide to take a break, or if we need to take a break, questions so far on what we presented for the general fund?
Anybody need a break?
Mr. Vaughn has, Mr. Sheldon.
I think he has him. I'll yield. Yield? Okay, go ahead. Can you get a little bit of clarification on the annual alley reconstruction? Sorry.
It's new.
Do you want it?
We didn't do it.
Okay.
Yeah, we didn't have that when you were here, so we appreciate you asking.
Yeah, currently we've got a program to replace the pavement in alleys that have rear garbage surface. So all our paved alleys is what we're working on. So right now, this year, I'm working on putting out 2 of the alleys right now to do construction. And then this one here is to put the one on the Hampstead out there.
Is that like a mill and overlay, or like, because those are asphalt, aren't they?
Yeah, they're asphalt. We're looking at reclaiming it and then relaying it is what we're trying to do.
And how many do you expect to be able to get done with that? I'm sorry, you
How
said.
many what?
How many do you expect to get done with 300,000?
300,000 is we'd only go from, let's see, Cordova to, what's that side street, to where Coronado is, that little dead-end street, that portion right there, okay,
Okay, so just one.
yeah, basically one long block, that's it.
Okay.
Of 300,000.
Is that before you turn the corner? and
that
stuff.
doesn't go across to do around the corner, that just only goes from, it's that little street that enters, well, I can't remember the name of it. But from Cordova to there, that's a great place.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I don't know, we talked about alley responsibilities in the past. Can you refresh us? So the ones that aren't getting trash service, is it 100% homeowner responsibility? Is there some city responsibility?
Yeah, all alleys in the city are responsibilities of the property owners to go midway. So if it's split in half. So if you back up to another property owner, they're responsible for half the alley and this half the alley. Never has Public Works maintained mowing or shrubs or any alley of the city. So all the years that we've had garbage service through it, we've never mowed. You'd have to hire, I don't know how many Public Works, more employees to go have a team that do all the alleys in these cities. But it's always been the responsibility of the homeowners to do it, and they've done it. When we've had garbage service, currently we've got a big problem now that no one wants to do. And so, but the sad thing is I still have utilities in those alleys. I have utilities, CPS has utilities, Centerpoint has utilities, and we need, right now, code compliance is out there actively trying to get property owners to maintain those alleys so we can get through these alleys.
And truly, I know that when they had garbage service, at least once a month they needed to go out. I would say for utility purposes, if they would do it at least 3 or 4 times a year, that would be sufficient to keep the alleyway clean. And I think that's the approach that code compliance has been trying to take with them. But I want to back up. Would you please define what you meant by maintenance? Because he gave you code enforcement maintenance. Are you talking about surface maintenance?
If it's not paid, not so much surface maintenance. I just was curious because that's a question we get frequently. And I can never remember. I know we talked about it ad nauseam, and I can't.
Okay.
It's not clear in my head, so I'm sure it's not clear in anybody else's head.
Sure.
So thank you for clarifying.
Good question.
Well, just to expand on that, not all alleyways that are paved are considered under this type of maintenance, correct? So like a good example would be off of Wild Ridge Drive between Wild Ridge and the parallel to Sunrise Canyon Drive. That's paved, but there's no alley pickup there.
Correct. So are there rear garages there?
Yes.
On that one?
Yes, there are rear garages.
Yes,
No, that's the other way, going towards, from Wild Ridge, going towards UC Boulevard, towards the apartments. That's all fence line.
That's all fence line. Is it paved or unpaved?
It's paved.
It's paved. Anything that's paved would be included.
Okay, so those would be monitored as well on top of the ones that are primarily used for garbage pickup.
Yeah, because it's accessing something. That's the reason why they're paved. So whether it be utilities or rear garages, that's only really paved alleys that we have.
So anything that's not paved, there's potentially utilities running down that.
Running down there, so basically we maintain those alleys to the level that we need them, and that's in the way of accessing utilities. So if there's ruts in there, standing water, that attract mosquitoes and everything, we'll blade it and we'll fill it in. But the main purpose of these alleys, they're easements, right? They're utility easements. And so the main purpose was, for many years, garbage service, but the main purpose, there's utilities in it. And that's what we have to maintain the alleys for, because they get access for utilities, whether it be my utility guy with the sewer, or CPS, or the Centerpoint gas.
Well, the difference, and I'm going to use my property as a great example, is the difference is that so my house, there's utility easement, I think, on my rear neighbors in their yard. But that, at one point, could have been just an alley or an easement that separates. So you don't have to actually go into our yard. So we basically used all of the space versus the old ones where they've given it up as part of the original design of the neighborhood.
Yeah, there was some stub outs that were done years ago for if there was development into the property next door, right? Where they expand, some of those would be used completely. Half of the property owner got this, half of that property got that. There's still an easement through there.
Right.
But now it's not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Randy, for point of clarification, this does not include the alleyway that's adjacent to Kitty Hawk, or does?
The Kitty Hawk one that is in front, the HEB gas pumps, that's the one we're going to be doing this year, in this current budget.
Okay, so you're rolling Kitty Hawk to Cordova.
Bavera to Devaca is, I'm doing this year. That's what I'm doing this year.
Okay, and then later it'll extend on the Amistad side.
So then I jump, and what you just saw up there is going from Cordova to that step out street.
There's been some significant washout of some alleyways. I'm going to list one example, but I actually had a chance to put an eyeball on. It's actually one that you and I and the city manager drove down last year. Basically, if you kind of put Clear Oak on your agenda to review that area because of the washout in some areas. Secondly, one of the things that you mentioned, or I should say did mention with regard to alleyway maintenance, is some sensitivity to drainage issues, particularly if the alleyways yield drainage into properties on one side or the other of the alley. You would be responsive to that.
Correct, and we've done that many years, especially in Coronado. There's quite a few that we've had to do some regrading to keep stormwater that enters the alley and then goes further down and enters someone's private property. So we've done those improvements and we'll continue.
Thank you.
I seem to remember sometime during this past year, we talked about working with, I believe it was CPS, about doing a one-time cleanup of the alleys, taking it from fence to fence, and is that still on the table or is that something that's not worked out?
I have my assistant director here and he can give you an update on that.
Oh, Mayor and Council. So yes, I'm working with CPS to try and continue on with that. I actually have a meeting on Tuesday next week with 2 reps from CPS. We're going to drive some of the alleys that we've already kind of got a list of. They're major ones that are completely overgrown. We have no access getting into them whatsoever. So that way he can take it back to their department head and actually say we do need to start categorizing some more of these in our area, because right now we're kind of pushed down the list a little bit. They are trying to prioritize this, but we can't do the whole city at one time. So we're trying to break it up into quadrants and areas so we can get some of our areas taken care of, but not all of them.
And I might want to just add a little context to that. We're not talking about going in and mowing behind people's properties and looking at grass, but we're really looking at trees that are at the 8 feet and above and trimming those up, because that is a huge problem for all utility vehicles that go through there. So they're not going to go curb to curb on an alley or fence line to fence line for people's property. They're really looking at what's in the air.
They're doing everything vertical, that's it.
Yes.
Correct. And also too, it's a joint venture that they're going to be pretty much going through clearing the areas, but then we're going to be doing the pickup behind them, just to help try and speed up the process, and also they've got money allocated for it, that we're trying not to use all their resources as well as not all of ours. So.
Understanding that this is a storm preventative program, as you all know. Sometimes when we have really bad storms, there are certain areas of the city that lose power all the time because of trees and tree limbs. So that's what this program is for, is to kind of harden our system when we have those high winds and high storms. So we'll continue to approach that with CPS.
First, just to clarify, are these all that you're working with CPS on, all alleyways, or just the ones that have power lines?
Only the ones that have power lines.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank Randy and his deputy director there for moving this project forward. We first brought this up as a possible project approximately a year ago, and to get CPS involved in was a great effort. I appreciate that. And again, the limitation of this project is principally for CPS lines, high wind lines, and hardening, which I think the efforts for that. It'll be approximately a 3-year project. Is that correct? 5-year project.
Probably a 5-year. It would be nice if we can do it in 3 years with the input that we're putting in. Typically when CPS does this type of project, they cut and make clear, but to try to entice them a little bit more, we're asking them to cut and we will clear. Understanding that, yeah, there is an expense to the city on this. That means public works crews are not out maybe doing drainage projects or whatever for a while. But once we get through that cycle, it should be a lot easier for CPS to maintain, and hopefully at that time they will cut and clear.
Any other questions?
Sit on the general fund. I know there was, Mr. Mitz had made a comment regarding over expenditure. Would you like us to address that, or is council comfortable with what we're moving
I'd
forward
like
on?
you to address it.
Sure. Yes.
So I think Maribel's going to go ahead and pull it up. So I received the email from Mr. Mitz, which I greatly appreciate his time and attention and care for the city budget. You know, a budget is not an exact science. It's based on estimates and forecasts, which I know that all of you know. And there's so many various factors that can affect that, and it's subject to change. You know, it's a crucial planning tool, which is why we do it. We get audited every year. Our auditors are comfortable with what we do. But again, it's basically predictions and assumptions, which we all know what that means. What I asked Christine to do is to go back and do a comparison using the same audit years that Mr. Mitz did, and kind of maybe provide some clearer insight on how to read a budget and how to determine whether you've overexpended, over-revenued, underexpended, or over-revenued. Remember, one of the things that we always try to do is to be fiscally conservative in our budget planning. So that means, yes, you should have a buffer into your expenditures, because the last thing we want to do is under that and then reduce the revenues, and then they go over and we don't have the revenue to pay for it. So that's kind of been our philosophy. It's worked well for us. So Ms. Green, God bless her, has spent 4 hours today putting this little presentation together for you. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to her.
So I am, Mr. Mitz, thank you so much for going through all the audits. Now, unfortunately, when I read the information, though, you have the city over budgeted expenditures, which really isn't the case. So I'm going to try to see if I can explain it so that everybody understands. This is a picture of the city's budgeted revenues versus the audited actuals. So you can see we're really not too far off. Thank you. Thank you. If you look into fiscal year 18, it was 3.2%. 3.2% over budgeted, which means that we were at 97%, as far as we were at 97% projected. So we were really very close to what we should have been at. The only anomalies were fiscal year 22 and fiscal year 23, where it looks like we under budgeted we over projected our revenues, but that was caused by the ARPA revenues that were budgeted in there. They were budgeted, and then when the auditors came in, they said, no, you can't budget them as received revenue. You have to defer them to the next year. And that's kind of what happened with that with fiscal year 22. Fiscal year 23, my predecessor, for whatever reason, decided to budget all of the ad valorem in the general fund and then transfer out of the general fund to debt service. But when she did her calculation, it didn't agree with what was presented to the county. So it caused us to overestimate what we would have received for revenues. But then if you look at fiscal year 24, we were at 1.81, so 98% on target for what we were supposed to receive. And then if you go to the next slide, sorry, where am I? So much excited. Here are our expenditures that we budgeted, and then our audited actuals. So again, you can see where it's really, really close, with the exception of fiscal year 22. And again, that was because we projected to receive ARPA purchases. I think they were the generators, and the generators didn't come in. So we had to then budget them again for the next fiscal year. So go to the next slide. So again, within our expenses, we were only off 4% for 2018. And then if you go down, you can see again in fiscal year 22, we were only at 85% correct, which again, that was the generators that were projected to be purchased. And then we come to fiscal year 24, where we're at 3.3, which means we were at 97% accuracy as far as our targeted expenses. So I just kind of wanted to give you a picture too of the ad valorem. If you look from 2018 to 2023, 24, I can't see, 25, I'm sorry. We've reduced the ad valorem tax rate by 14% in that amount of time. So we're really not asking for more than we want or need for ad valorem taxes. In many cases, our tax projections for ad valorem come in under budget. Yes, under budget. So we budget 8 million, we receive 790 million. So the information, although it wasn't necessarily incorrect, because if you go 2 more slides for me. Okay, next slide. There we go. The information that was provided by Mr. Metz are in the blue, and the actuals are in the orange. Now, the difference here is that in the email, it says that the city over budgeted expenditures, so that's why I targeted was the expenditures. And the actuals, this is what we actually spent, the audited amounts we spend. So the numbers that are in the email are not correct as far as what was presented as being over budgeted. So if you take the revenue that was projected and say it was over projected or under projected by $300,000. So you have $300,000 that more revenue that you received or received in the general fund. It could have come from sales tax, it could have come from grants that weren't anticipated, it could have come from donations because you don't budget donations or grants. You try to stay away from it only because you don't have the guarantee that you're gonna receive it. So you have $300,000 over revenue that you expected. Then within your expenditures, you have over budgeted your expenditures again by $300,000. Then of course that's going to net to $600,000. But when we do our budget, we have to anticipate, okay, we anticipate having 35 police officers, but we only have 30 that we're able to keep. We still have to have a budget for the other 5 in the event they come on. And this is a budget that these are the budgeted positions that have been approved by council. So we have to have them in the payroll budget, even though they may not be staffed at that time. So although the information is skewed a little bit, I'm hoping that that kind of brings some clarity to why it would show that we have $700,000, for instance, over the revenues. Now, when we do have that, that actually goes to fund balance. So currently we have a 12-month fund balance policy, which means that if our budget is $19 million, we have to have $19 million in fund balance, which also means that the city can operate for 1 full year without having to receive any revenues. So we could pay all of our bills for a full year and never receive a revenue of any type.
I'll just add, and I know I hate to bring up Kerrville in their time of trial. So you can only imagine Kerrville have lost half of its city, half of its tax revenue, but yet they're still going to have to come up with some way to pay for all that catastrophic disaster that they've had, which is why we have a fund balance policy, which is why ours is 12 months. I don't know what it is for Kerrville. I pray right now that it's 36 months worth from them, because it may take even more than that to bounce them back. So the purpose of the fund balance is to provide for times of disaster, or economic downturns, or economic shift, or tariffs, or whatever else we happen to go through, pandemics, and the things of that nature. So I think, we've always worked to what we believe is to the benefit of the residents without overtaxing or oversaving, and just providing a secure and stable financial wherewithal for the city for not just this year, but for the long term as well. And so I know I've had at least 12 calls, visits, or phone calls regarding the information that I guess went out on social media. And, I believe social media is electronic cruelty, right? The only thing that ever comes out on there is, suspicious, deceitful, maybe gives that impression that there's a conspiracy to harm people. It's not just this, it's all cases. I wish we didn't have social media, but we do and we live with it. But I guess for me, that misinformation doesn't serve anyone, so we just wanted to make sure that we were able to clarify that so that people could understand that there's no reason to be pessimistic towards the budget, the council, the staff, our future as a city, and what we're trying to do for our residents. And we try to do everything we can to be good stewards of the public trust. And we just hope that they recognize that, and that maybe some of this information that we presented this evening will clear some of that up.
If citizens ever have any questions about anything, or if they don't understand something that has been presented here or that's on the website that's financial related, they're more than welcome to call me or come into my office. I'll be happy to make time to sit with any citizens that want to go over it. Again, it's not that Mr. Mitz's numbers are wrong, they're just in the wrong places.
Meaning his numbers are in the audit, but that's not the numbers he should have been looking at. He was off on his pages.
But I'd be happy to sit with anyone that has any questions and go over anything that they have questions about. Because the one thing we want to be sure is that we are transparent and that the citizens of the city are comfortable that we are performing our fiduciary responsibilities. So, slides. That's it.
Oh, that's just
that's the actual numbers. Yeah,
it's the
numbers presented.
behind this.
The numbers presented compared to the actual audit numbers for what was expenditures. The numbers that were presented actually were the difference, the revenues that were collected, and then again the expenses that were not spent. And I mean, if you look, a lot of it, I can't see, I'm sorry. If you look from fiscal year 21, 22, and 23, those, a lot of those are related to the ARPA funding. Because again, we were expecting to get money, or I'm sorry, expecting to get equipment. We budgeted for the equipment, and then they said, sorry, we don't have it. It's not available. You have to wait till next year. Same thing happened with a lot of vehicles. There were a few years that I noted that sales tax was under projected, and PEG funding as well as PEG funding and something else. Oh, PEG funding and CPS funds for the 2% for yes, thank you, were not budgeted, and that was almost $300,000 right there. So they weren't budgeted. So then, of course, you're going to say, "Oh, well, you received $300,000 more than you expected." Well, yes, because nobody budgeted it. And so,
we just hope that clarifies everything for council. Any questions on?
Any questions or anything? Thank you very much. That was actually
So
very
we appreciate
clarifying.
you giving us the opportunity. With that, it is time for a break.
Want to take just a 15-minute break? Or
Yes, sir.
It is 5:18. Breakers.
I mean, it was
5:48. We'll call the meeting back to order. The workshop back to order. And Mr. Goldberg, you have a question.
Yes, sir, and I'm sorry, I apologize that I did not ask this sooner, and I meant to ask it, I just thought I was waiting for the right time. I need to learn how to put my pages in order. We were talking about streets and street improvements and budgeting, and we did that. We try to budget a certain amount, and we have our bonds for that. We have the venue tax that comes in and EDC and golf course. A few meetings ago, we talked about, because we look at a plan for the next however many years, 3, 5, 10 years, to look at splitting that venue tax to be EDC, golf course, and street. One of my questions is for Randy, and that is when you go out and you identify the streets that are bad, that's a type of survey. can't think of the name of
Is
it.
it street index?
Street index. So we have a street index, and I've been harassing a few, because I knew what this was, I knew we were talking budgets. So I was harassing a lot of my engineers about it. And they talked about having a street index done every year, and I look at them and I'm like, no, that's kind of expensive. And you know, every couple of years, is that something that we have budgeted for, is to have a street index created in UC? Is that part of what we've got? Yes, you'll see in the upcoming, not this year, but in the upcoming budget year, that we'll budget for a new street assessment. And that is the year from when we go, like right now, we've already identified the streets for our $30 million bond right now. So when we do this other one, it'll be for that index, to figure out, when we go out issuance another one, that we can look at what are the streets that we need that one.
Okay, because I'm hoping that over time, when we look at splitting, and if the venue tax gets split, that we have that we'll have those funds to start doing here. We're going to do this section of this road, this section of this road.
Because the current one is a baseline, right? So we haven't, it was done in 2008, and so that one there is, the road hasn't improved since then, right?
No.
So they've stayed our priority all the way through, so, yes.
But yeah, we are intending to do an update on that. And again, that should not only serve this council, but future councils as well, to help identify future street projects. In terms of the venue tax, so if you have a special tax for streets, it's called a street sales tax, that can but not be used to issue debt, but it can be used within your regular street budget to do more cash flow street projects. Do we anticipate that we'll be doing that? Yes, we should and we will. That might not be this year. Obviously, we know, I'll jump ahead on, I think it's August 5th, Sal and Jeremy remind me, your golf architect will be back with a post plan for the improvements at the golf course, which is the greens, the bunkers, the irrigation, the tees, etc. And so it would probably behoove us to look at those numbers to figure out, put that plan in place. Once that plan is in place and you determine how you want to fund it, then we should probably start looking at how much venue tax moving forward will the golf course really need, and do we split it, in half or in eighths, or what, quarters or eighths, or how will that happen? But just, we're this close to having all of that ready.
Awesome. Okay, thank you very much. I apologize for backtracking.
And yes, and we'll just this one get to you. Thank you.
Any other questions?
All right, moving on, we appreciate everybody's questions. Thank you.
Okay, so our special revenues were created for this fiscal year. And the legislative group, yes, have created another House bill which requires the city to have a consolidated court technology and court security. We still have to maintain our separate court technology and court security funds until they're expensed. And anything after May 29th of this fiscal year has to now be collected in the consolidated court tech and security. Thank you to our court administrator for coming and letting me know, because I was not aware of it until she came and told me. So we've created that fund, and we'll have a very small budget for that, just probably projecting it revenues for. Did you have any questions about the special revenue funds?
Can I just add in on the ARPA? As you know, we got the 5.2 million. We have the ARPA plan that council approved. We have followed that. I believe this is our last year for seeing the ARPA funds in the budget. If you remember, we budgeted for 2 mental health officers, 1 in PD and 1 in fire. And so this 26 budget is our 5th year. At that point, all ARPA funds are expended. So those 2 positions then will become funded through the general fund, which is the ad valorem and sales tax. So that'll be a little bit of a pinch point for next year's FY27 budget, just to heads up on that. ARPA has been fully expended.
And we need those officers.
Yes, we'd like to think that we need those officers. I think the service they're doing for the community is valuable and very much needed. All right.
Grady really covered the utility fund well. But just again, total revenues are projected at $12,648,402. Total expenditures, $11,440,969, with no increase expected. CIP projects are anticipated to be $2,229,486.
And we're going to cover their debt service and their CIP projects in detail in a couple of slides.
So their capital improvements, sewer line rehab uses bond funds, and it's $668,812 is expected to be expensed this next fiscal year. Property acquisitions, we're anticipating $79,000. Water tank painting also bond funds. It's $618,500. Is that correct, Randy, that those are bond funds that you use for the tank painting?
Yes. No. Those are cash flow. The 618
Yes.
is cash.
Okay, that's going to be cash flow through the revenue that's received for the tower rentals. What we've done is we've created a reserve account. So at the end of each fiscal year, when we receive our audit, they have an amount that's set aside for the water tank painting. So it's cash flow. And I'll correct that on the packet. The annual water line rehab project and the annual sewer line rehab projects, both of those we use cash to take care of those projects.
Mr. Lavalley had a question?
I just wanted to verify, before you verified it, clarify it with regard to the cash flow issues and not the bond funds. But while we're here, and you've mentioned the sewer line rehab projects, and I can ask Randy at a later date, are these sewer line rehab projects associated with the I&I sewer reports that we have? Or
Yes. I can say yes, and it also aligns with our street reconstruction that we're doing as well.
Okay, so we can talk about that. Thanks.
So you remember earlier we talked about our street bond projects, Churchwood, Logwood, etc. Within each of those projects, there are water and sewer lines, and so maybe they need to be relocated or lowered or tested, or the pipes need to be changed out while we're open. So that $862,000 will be included in some of those projects as well, where needed. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. So I just want to clarify, you were talking about you need to correct something. There's two lines up there that say bond funds. Is one of them not bond?
The water tank painting.
It's not bond funds.
Okay,
It's not cash.
so-
We're not using bond funds, it's just cash.
And then we have sewer line rehab that's under bond funds for $668,000. But then we also have annual sewer line rehabilitation projects. So we have is this a former project that we were doing under bond funds? And then going forward, we're doing it through cash?
So the annual is my cash, and the other is the bond funds that we're using that is targeting I&I, and then.
Can you clarify I&I for me?
Water infiltration.
Infiltration.
Thank you.
Stormwater. So basically, that one is targeting all my clay pipes and asbestos pipes that we have in the system. But that bond fund is trying to target our street, following along with our street projects that we have.
Versus the other ones, then you're just.
The other one is following my Westway project over there. The other one is targeting the CDG project.
Okay.
Replacing those lines.
Thank you very much. That's very, very.
I'm sorry, Randy. One more time, that is, the annual sewer line rehab project that's not associated with road improvements will be directed toward the I&I target areas that have been identified in the sewer surveys. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can say any project that I have sewer is basically tied to I&I, because the only projects that I'm
clay lines, basically, clay pipelines that we're replacing. So whether, and a lot of these are targeting areas that do have I&I, or we have a street-related project, which accomplishes both.
Okay. It may not be an appropriate time yet, but now we're sort of integrated into the concept of I&I. Our prior SOAR survey, which only represents half of the city because of the SOAR distribution throughout our city, identified approximately 3.5 miles of sewer line that was, I'm going to use the wrong term, but there are 3 repair-ish levels, INI 1, INI 2, and INI 3. And basically, 3.5 miles within the city. And then the remainder, lower priority, was like 17 miles of sewer issues within the city. Obviously, half a K doesn't cover that. So this is an extended but targeted servicing all of those identified I&I problems that are at least priority 1.
Yes, it's going to target priority 1, target priority 2, just in relation to whether if I'm replacing that street and say it's a priority 2 or priority 3, we're going to do it, obviously. But yes, basically we're going to follow that. A lot of them are on the Sarah side that we've completed that survey. So we know which ones that we need to target there. So that's where the majority is. Some of it is on the CCMA side. We've done a lot of pipe bursting on the CCMA side. Currently that study's going on now. So we won't have a target list until that one's completed. But right now we know what our target lines are on the Sarah system.
Okay, and the second I&I survey will be due?
That one's at least another 5 years out before it's completed. Because it's broken up in phases. We're in phase 2 right now.
Guesstimate of total cost for being compliant with the I&I repairs? I mean, we're talking about...
I don't have to be, really, there's no compliance that I have to meet other than our own compliance.
I see.
So I'm not mandated by anybody to have it done. It's more for Sarah and CCMA would like all I&I corrected, but it's on our timeline that we can do it, that we can afford to do it. And that's what we're doing is I'm targeting to where we can afford to do it. Very good.
And I&I is like a lot of ongoing projects in the city. You'll go through and you go through all your phases and test it and finish it, and then as soon as you're done, you start all over again. It's a never-ending process. So,
my understanding of the I&I is we're really protecting the downstream water treatment facilities. That's the primary thing. It doesn't necessarily have to deal with sewer backups or things like that. So understand that. Just in general, the I&I report is for the city-owned sewer lines.
Right.
But when the I&I reports are done, the surveys are done, they actually do peek into the residential lines, which may have greater I&I issues than our city lines. There's no connect to identify for the residents that they may have a significant problem. Does that make sense?
Are you saying on the personal line?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You know, because they take a peek in each of the lines and can see at least 10 feet-ish from the trunk
Maybe
down.
like a foot or two. That's probably as far as they can see. In those reports, that we get, we have to go through every survey, and they're not so much targeting what they see up that line. They only target what ours are.
Yes.
And if it's a bad connection or a good connection. But yes, we will. That's our map that we'll target it as we go forward. Once the Sarah side is done, so we're concentrating on that. Once we get the CCMA, then I got to combine the two. And then I got to prioritize the two systems, which I think we're doing now.
Thanks for the long-running clarification on that one.
Okay.
So utility fund debt service is all funded through, or all supported by water sales. So the payments for fiscal year 2026, it's going to be $1,432,204. The expenditures you can see here are for prior certificates of obligation and then one that we're anticipating issuing. Sarah reuse water line as well, which we have all of our expiration dates here. Questions about that? Paul has a question, sir.
Just clarify on the 2026 CVO. So Brady mentioned it. That's the Public Works building. Am I right? I don't really see that in the budget. So is that something that you're expecting that you're getting budget approval on this budget, or is that something we're going to hash out later?
So we're going to come to you in fiscal year 2026. We'll come to you to issue the certificates of obligation for that. But working with Victor, our financial advisor, he's saying those payments wouldn't come until 2027. So you'll see that debt figured in the 2027 fiscal year.
I guess my question is if we want to fight about it, like, are we fighting now or are we fighting later?
Fight later.
Later. So that's not really part of this budget process,
We should always do long-range planning, which, Randy is phenomenal at doing. So he's anticipating that he needs to issue about $6 million of debt. He's provided for it. It's in the rate model. If it doesn't happen, next year we're going to change the rate model. Whether you want to fight about it, that's all up to all of you. But, it's incumbent upon us to bring to you what we think needs to be done in this city to prepare for the future. And the Public Works Yard is one of those items. Because it does provide for the water and the sewer that we have in the city as well as streets. So, we'll bring it to you, and if council decides not to do it, then we'll go back and change our rate model.
And I won't bring it to you until I see the interest rates are down, the metal prices are down, not up right now. Right now is not the time I want to even want to issue it right now. So we want to wait till the market's right for us to go out there. So,
okay. All right, thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Ball?
And this is somewhere in the order of 6 to 6.2 mil for that project that involves not just facilities for equipment and supplies, but has kind of evolved into a new public works building with expanded classroom and office spaces and break spaces and things like that. Okay. So basically, I also agree that, we'll want to carefully look at it with regard to our water requirements at that time.
yeah, and that's one thing that we've looked at is our debt falling off before we bring on new debt, which this year we have debt falling off, and we're looking at that. At our Public Works Yard right now we've got maxed out. I got somebody in office that was our training room. So, but as the city continues staffing and we're growing, but this is more of a warehouse. Majority of it's a warehouse, but it gives us ability to expand a little bit more to where right now we've already maxed out where we're at right now. So, if you've seen the yard, I got every piece of equipment. Now that we're bringing the fire trucks and we're maintaining the fire trucks, I got to have more space for that now. So we didn't have that problem before. So. But yes, we can hash it out later.
Any other questions? Proceed.
Stormwater revenue is anticipated to be $941,000 approximately. Total expenditure $766,000. Capital improvements for the stormwater fund, Civil Creek property clearing is $40,000. Oak Meadows drainage projects $300,000, and brush cleaning $25,000. So again, for these projects, we'll be using the revenue that's within stormwater to transfer it over to cover these projects.
Any questions on these projects before we move forward?
So we're to the golf course. We have the revenues and the expenditure summaries here. As you can see, the golf course was able to fund their M&O 100%. Their capital outlay of $101,800 is going to be funded with venue tax. And then within the venue tax fund, we have approximately $800,000 that is going to be within the venue tax, accruing interest for the venue tax until such projects are approved by council for the golf course to continue. And I know the architect will be here on August 5th to go over what he suggests be done to the golf course. We've also included in this budget, can you go back one for me? A 5-year capital item replacement schedule. So those are the items that the golf course anticipates having to replace over the next 5 years. And I think you'll see that the majority of the replacement program is for equipment for course and grounds, and then golf cart replacement in 3 years, I believe. They're going to replace the entire fleet. Thank you so much. The entire fleet of golf carts. That way, there's no problem of people waiting and wanting to get the newer ones instead of the older ones, and it's just everything is always on the same schedule.
So if you remember back to our golf course operational assessment, one of the things that came out of that is we should not be purchasing golf carts every year, 25 every year. We should really purchase them all at the same time. So Sal has sat down and devised a plan where in 3 years, we should be able to move into what the golf course consultant had recommended. And so we're planning that would be what, 2029? 39, I don't remember which one, where all 75 golf carts will be replaced at the same time. And then we should be able to continue with that on a regular basis.
So that's it for the golf course. Unless you have questions.
Mr. Ball.
Thank you. Market budget is effectively $250,000.
Sorry, sorry.
The marketing budget is effectively
$225,000 in the marketing budget.
Yes, sir.
So is that increase significantly over what even your consultant was recommending?
Well, sir, but it's being funded through hotel motel tax. So it's not affecting the general fund or any of the other funds. The hotel motel tax is really limited on what we can spend it on. Marketing is the one thing we can spend it on. So we're using some of the hotel motel tax in order to fund that.
Yes, very true. And basically, as you know, I'm a very strong proponent of the Triangle Development area. The hotel has been contributing to our hotel tax for a number of years to improve that area, but has yet to reap any benefit from the hotel tax. So basically, I'm talking about the Palisades area of our city that sees more revenue to our city than the golf course provides. So I'm confused by the increase, and I'm also confused by the absence of the other non-earned revenues in the numbers that are presented here. So basically, on the page back, there's $800,000. $800,000 are for the capital improvements of the golf course that you say is council dependent on approval. Is that correct?
Councilmember, I apologize, sir. I can't hear everything you're saying.
Okay.
If I understand there's a set,
He wants to know, first of all, can some of the venue tax fund or the hotel motel tax be used to make improvements around the Motel 8 area, since it is a motel hotel tax venue? It's a funding source.
It's a very fine line, because we have to prove that it's bringing heads to beds, heads in beds. So we have to say that by doing that, we're enticing people to come to the city of Universal City.
to stay at Motel 8.
Yeah. So it's a really fine line, but I'll be happy to look into it and see if I can find out further. But as far as improvement around it, it's not likely because it's not an attraction. It's not something that would draw people to come to the city. We're able to do it with the golf course because we're able to show in some respect that it does bring people to the city.
And again, it's
So essentially
in terms of
nine-
its reliance with the hotel that is adjoining it.
Right.
So essentially, a facility that brings 90,000 people-ish per year to spend money in Universal City is not competitive for the hotel tax.
No, that's not what I said, sir. That's not what I said. You're saying you want to use it to improve the area around the hotel, right? What is the area around the hotel? Forgive me, I don't know.
17 restaurants,
Okay,
essentially,
but does that bring people to possibly stay the night?
they are staying the night, that's the point. There are 35 to 40,000 people per year that stay the night in that.
But are they staying the night at the hotel because of the restaurants around the hotel? They're staying the night at the hotel, most probably because they're going to the Air Force Base.
Okay, so let's turn it around then
Okay.
and say, how many people that are staying at the more expensive hotel are spending the night to play golf only?
But it's not how much money they're spending at the hotel, sir. It's, are they possibly coming to stay to play golf? What are the odds that someone's going to come and stay the night to eat at a restaurant? Do you understand what I'm saying? So it has to be an expense that we can say they've come to the city purposely to stay to do this. And I'll look further into it, but that's the guidance I have been given by the comptroller's office. But I'll be happy to look into it.
So you'll be able to provide something that our consultant really hasn't provided to us, the number of people who stay at the hotel that essentially are there to exclusively play golf.
You see, you're wanting specifics that can't be provided.
Okay.
So what I can say though is the odds, okay, just go with our odds. The odds of someone coming to Universal City and staying the night, right, to eat at a restaurant or stay in the Palisades area to eat at those areas, how can I go to the comptroller and say, oh yeah, definitely they came and stayed the night to go to the hotel or to go to the restaurants. But I could say there's a possibility that people came to the city of Universal City to play golf and do rounds at, like when the tournaments come in. I could prove that the tournaments come in. The odds of people coming from other areas and staying the night at the hotel to play golf are greater than people coming and staying at the Hotel 8 or the Motel 8 and eating at the restaurants. Odds are they're going to be at the Air Force Base.
Okay.
Well, again, sir,
Let's move one step forward then, okay? Essentially, the one step forward is there a particular reason that the approximate $100,000 in administrative fees have been reduced this year for golf course operations and not going to the general fund?
That would be a question that I would hope that one of our council members would address because they were on that board. Councilmember Vaughn, do you mind addressing it? Thank you.
Sure. So the consultant was looking at what the cost of the services would be if they went outside, not coming to the city, if they went for bookkeeping and payroll and HR services. And it would have been, in their opinion, much less than what the city was charging. The city was doing a cost allocation based on the city's costs rather than looking at it from what would a business pay for those services. And so the consultant recommended lowering it, and I agreed that I thought the charge was a little high in what was being charged for the golf course, especially when you look at what we're charging the stormwater fund and utility fund comparatively. Those are they tend to be bigger operations, and they were not paying as much as the golf course. So it made sense in my mind to reduce it to be more of a market rate rather than a cost allocation rate. It also helps the golf course cover their costs a little bit, which I think is important for the golf course to be self-sufficient. So it helps get it towards that end goal.
So essentially, it was decided we will vote on this issue. Is that my understanding, Mr. Mayor?
Not tonight.
Not tonight. Okay. So basically, it's my understanding the council will vote. Now, we obviously need money in the general fund this year for the expenses that we program. To remove the $100,000-ish this year does not seem appropriate for the needs of the general fund. The second item is, as I brought up before with the mayor, and the mayor agreed to address it at this time, I think, is essentially I would also like to recoup the $80,000 per year from the billboard funds to go to the general fund. So is that part of this discussion tonight also?
Up to you guys. In case everybody doesn't know what he's referring to, so if you remember, in order to get the hotel, we had to relocate hole 14 on the golf course. Part of hole 14 was a sign that they had on the frontage road to I-35. Now, the sign didn't work for many years, but it was still out there to the golf ball on it said Olympia Hills. We had to remove that. And so instead of placing one of our own, what we did is we leased out that property to a national billboard company per contract, and they pay us $80,000 a year to lease that space. Somewhere along the way, I don't know how it happened, but it did. It was determined that because that was the golf course land and the golf course sign, that the revenue from that should go to the golf course. And so it's in the golf course budget. Mr. Raval is indicating that he doesn't like that decision, and he's asking the council, I guess, for feedback on that.
Yes, ma'am. I actually went a little further, and I produced the legal documentation of the city property, and essentially the billboard rights belong to the city of Universal City, not the golf course of Universal City. That's what the legal ease was that was provided for our discussion. So I'm just trying to recoup money to the general fund, okay? And basically, I think we're protected more in the long-term interest of our people too, provided to the general fund. Where it goes from there, we establish by the priorities that you present to us. And basically, I will say one more thing. And that one more thing is related to how the mayor started this council meeting. Approximately 6 months ago, we were presented with letters from children around the Universal City area. And those letters consistently said, "Thank you for protecting us." And it's so timely that I think about this now with the disaster in Kerrville. Thank you for protecting us. We need monies in the general fund to provide crosswalk safety, to provide speed calming or amelioration and so forth. We don't need $100,000 in golf courts and to make sure the golf paths are just so perfect. We need to protect our children. We need to protect our seniors. We need to get money to the general fund to do that. And essentially, we've got a problem this year. We're being flat taxed value. And so that's my commitment to this council and to our citizens, to bring as much money to the general fund to protect our residents as the best we can. Thank you for your time, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to help clarify a couple of things, the hotel tax, occupancy tax. For years, I remember when we sat up on here, we had a hard time spending that money because there were so few things that we do in the city that actually qualify to use that money. So it was just pooling.
Right.
I think we, don't quote me on this, but I think we tried to help one of the events, like help pay for one of the events that we did in the city that has a lot of external outreach. People were coming into town potentially for it. I think
Tournaments that were national tournaments that were coming in.
So a lot of the ways that we are tied where we can actually use that money is really closely tied to the golf course because that is something that people would come in and spend multiple days for. Can you jump to the page that has the numbers on it, that had the marketing numbers? What was last year's marketing budget? Do we know offhand?
I want to say it was 120.
And last year, was any of it funded with HOT?
It was all funded with HOT.
So we've been doing that for a while?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How much is sitting in the, roughly?
Roughly $500,000.
Okay. So not a whole lot of money, generally speaking.
So it's 112, 129,000, and now 225,000.
Okay.
But I think we're losing sight of the fact that the venue tax has gone from $1.9 million going to the golf course to now 100,000 until the other amounts.
I don't disagree with that.
I'm just saying that I can't find another way to spend the marketing.
If the marketing money, so my thought process is if the marketing money is coming from the hot tax and we can spend more money to get more people to come play golf and spend their money at the golf course, which makes the golf course make more money and become less dependent on the venue tax, then we have the opportunity in the future to use more venue tax towards parks, which then reduces the general fund cost to maintain the parks, which frees up more funds in the general fund for us to use for everything else in the city.
Right.
Do we all want to draw that out? Like, in generally, I see us, if we actively are putting money into the golf course that reduces its dependency on the venue tax, then eventually we can funnel that out and cut our parks costs down, which allows us to use money for a number of things. But I was here when we talked about the sign when that was built, and that was back when the golf course was hurting on a regular basis. And so, yes, we decided, I can't speak for everybody else, but my thought process was when we talked about doing it was in order to help make the golf course less or more solvent. We couldn't make it completely, but make it more solvent so that it would stop taking funds from other places. And as we continue to work on the golf course, drive more business into it, drive more revenue, anything that reduces its dependency on the venue tax is great because then we can shift it into parks, which then frees up money in the general fund, which we can use for the city's general needs. So it makes sense to me. I don't see a major problem with it. I don't like money sitting around not being able to be used, which has always been the problem with the hotel occupancy tax, because there wasn't a whole lot of places to move. So if it's sitting there, we can use it, and it can have a double-edged sword where we don't have to spend money, extra money into the golf course, and we can drive more business and more revenue in the golf course at the same time. Let's do it. We want to revisit what we do with the money on the side. That's fine. I don't care. One way or another, if it's supporting the golf course, it's freeing up money that can then go to parks, which then frees up the general fund. And I'm going to repeat that multiple times because I want to make sure it sinks in. Any money we save out of venue tax can be shifted to parks, which reduces the general fund obligation towards the parks, which opens up more money to the general fund.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I asked for a comment by our finance officer with regard to that statement. Any money saved from the venue tax can go back to the general fund. Is that a correct statement now?
Any money?
That's not what he said.
Well,
Let him say it again.
Let him say it again.
Any money that supplies the golf course in a way, either through revenue, through golf course revenue, event center revenue, the billboard sign revenue, the marketing money coming from hotel tax, reduces the golf course's dependency on the venue tax. Now that we're able to shift venue tax money towards parks, that will then reduce the demand of the parks from the general fund, which means we have more money in the general fund.
Yes, sir. I think what Mr. Obama is referring to is if our parks budget is 1.8 million and we have grants coming in for 200 million, we can only move 1.6 because we can't double dip.
But that's 1.6 we didn't have.
Exactly, yes, sir. That's correct.
that's now available in the general fund for other things.
Well, in this case, it would be 600,000.
I realize it feels like a game of like Jenga or Tetris to get things moved around, but for right now, it's a great way to do it. And it makes sense. That's it for me. Thank you.
I just want to say, I'm fine if we want to move the sign, the revenue to the general fund, but I don't want to backfill it with more venue tax. And it's the same thing with that admin charge. If we increase the admin charge back up, I don't want to have to then backfill more venue tax to the golf course to then fill the hole that it might create. So we're going to have to be cost savings elsewhere in the golf course budget to eat that. And if they're willing to do that, I would be fine with that. The other thing, I think you have an interesting concept on the hotel motel tax. I don't want to ignore our other hotel, and it sounds like there is additional money in the hotel motel tax fund aside from this 225. And so I would be interested if we've ever reached out to them to ask, what could we do that would help them, but hasn't been to have them maybe bring us some ideas that we could light on fire with our money.
It will. And I've spoken to the comptroller's office at depth, and we're very restricted with that fund. We're not the only city. I mean, there are multiple cities that can't do anything with it because they don't have reasons for people to come.
Sure, but I would assume the hotel has some things that they would like to do, like maybe there's a magazine that they haven't been able to afford, or some website that they can't
Which could
cover the
very
fees or
well
like that.
possibly say, we may be able to use that because it's a marketing tool for the hotel. That might work.
Right, so maybe they might have
Because
some
it
suggestions.
could indeed pull people's interest. So that's a possibility. And I can ask about that.
Sure, and the only thing I mentioned about the marketing budget on the golf course is if we reduce what we're going to spend in marketing, that means we have to reduce how much hotel motel tax we can give to the golf course. So it's a net zero, and it wouldn't ever really help out the general fund because there wouldn't be a way to like arbitrage it to take in the hotel motel tax, spend less, and somehow generate a surplus that could maybe reduce venue tax dependency. So I do think it's kind of a win-win to put as much as we can in the golf course, as long as we're not neglecting some of our other hotels.
And like I said, I'll reach out to the comptroller's office to see if assisting hotels with marketing is something we can do. Because it may be.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Revelle. If you look at what the hotel tax is being used for, it includes things like the Placer AI software, $24,000 per year, something in that order of magnitude. Okay, that Placer AI software is pretty much has only been used exclusively at the golf course, for the golf course, not for promotion.
It's not true.
Not true?
That's an untrue statement.
I'm sorry, okay. I've only seen data, except
What
for
you
the
asked
data,
for, that's what we do.
except for the data that's been provided me for a 10-day period for the Motel 8.
Because you asked for it, yes.
That I asked for, right? I haven't seen it used in Michael's economic development planning type thing to date. Now, it may have been, okay? But there are a lot of
It's been used for Gather, it's been used for the food truck, it's used for the aviation district, it's been used for Bubba's 35, we used it for Einstein Bagels. We use it.
So that's my point. The point is the hotel tax is being used to facilitate other things right now, not just the golf course, not just marketing for the golf course.
That is correct.
It markets the city, sir. If you market the golf course or you market the city, it can be used for that.
I think we're talking pretty
No,
much.
sir, we're not. I said that the hotel motel tax fund was being given to the golf course to market the golf course because they can bring heads to beds. And if we're using it for a marketing tool for the city, it's the same thing. And as Councilman Yvonne brought up, there's a possibility that we can assist the hotels with some type of marketing that will bring people to the city. We may even be able to talk to the base, the Air Force Base, to see if there's an opportunity there. But those are things that I need to reach out to the comptroller's office to see whether or not they can be used. It can be used for marketing. How much marketing do we have for the city of Universal City that we could really use it all for? We've got a huge amount in there. We've got to use it. It just sits there.
Yes, and yes, as long as we understand that it may be possible to apply it to something for Universal City.
But that's what we said, sir. I said, we would check, as Councilmember Vaughn said, we'll check. And then as Mrs. Turner said, we're using it for other things. It's not just the golf course.
So going back to number 2, that is the billboard fee, the $80,000 per year. I don't understand the convoluted logic of putting that in the golf course and then maybe taking out, putting it in the general fund, rather than to secure it to the general fund by council decision. Is there a logic to do that?
I don't know.
Mayor Pro Tem, ask a question.
I'm glad you circled back to the billboard, because I do have an opinion about that. To me, it truly makes sense. We have kind of aggressively gone after the golf course to fund yourselves. And we did take property away from them for the hotel. That hole was part of their structure. I think that in and of itself makes it make sense for it to wrap back to the golf course. They lost their marketing tool on 35. That golf ball thing was gone. And so we are letting them market themselves in a different way. If you remember, that's one of the things that the golf assessment talked about, is that you guys don't have signage on 35. People don't know you exist on 35. So it's a great way to give the golf course an opportunity to get their name out there. I think it makes more sense for the golf course to get it, since we've asked them to make money and to be able to, break even, versus bringing it in here to apply towards public safety, which I think we've got covered every other way. Public safety is not hurting. If we need to do something else for public safety, I think we'll find a way to get that money. But I think that $80,000 needs to wrap back to the golf course.
Mr. Shelley.
Thank you, Mr. And also, I agree with Councilman Vaughn said, unless we can find a way to find an $80,000 reduction in cost to the golf course to offset that loss of revenue, all we're doing is shifting money back away.
Excuse me, we've just presented the fact that the operational costs of the golf course will be met, revenues will meet their expenses.
With the $80,000.
With the $80,000.
$225,000, yes.
That's included. That's budgeted, because it's a plannable number.
On this thing?
Yes. On the left, marketing.
On this page?
Yes, sir.
And
Within the revenues on that page is included the $225,000 for marketing, and under general and admin is $80,000, which is for the sign.
So you're including the $80,000 in this four
Yes, sir, it's in that.
Okay. So essentially, you're adding unearned revenue in your summary that you met.
Well, sir, it's all unearned until next fiscal year.
I'm sorry, ma'am?
It's all unearned until next fiscal year. When next fiscal year comes, that'll be earned revenue. And whether it's earned by fees or by the agreement, the lease agreement, or by a transfer, however the money's coming in, it's money that the golf course has quote unquote earned.
So essentially you're saying there's going to be that much of an operational expenditure deficit that is not made by revenue generated by
No, sir, they're not covering 100% of their expenses to earn revenue. But that's given in the budget. That's explained in the budget. There's the $80,000, there's $225,000 for marketing, and then the $100,000, which is from the venue tax. But I think we're nickel and diming them, in all honesty. I think that they've done an incredible job bringing a budget that is very well balanced, and that they are working hard to ensure that they can wean themselves off of the venue tax. I don't know what more you would want from them. We're allowing them to use marketing because that's really one of the only places we can find to use the money. And the $80,000 is something that was agreed to previously. And with the venue tax, right now it's an immaterial amount. So I guess my question to you would be, what do you want the golf course to do? Cover 100%? And they may not. They may never.
I'd love the golf course to I'd like this council to commit to the golf course $500,000 from the venue tax to support the golf course. $500,000 that essentially they can use that they're not covering by with their operational income. $500,000 that replaces the $500,000 that the citizens of Universal City had put into retiring the debt of the golf course because it couldn't pay it for itself.
It did pay for itself, so they did pay it back.
But you're asking to give them $500,000 of venue tax, and we're saying no, only give them $100,000 of venue tax. So it doesn't make sense
No,
what you're saying.
You're saying on this page, $800,000, basically.
We're saying $800,000 will remain in the venue tax fund, accruing interest for the venue tax. And upon any type of capital projects that are required for the golf course, we will come to council for council approval. If they approve it, we will fund it through the venue tax if necessary. That's what we're saying.
Ms. Budd?
Is this something the two of you could hash out
Well, I thought we had
because
already
we're kind of understanding the train is going around the tracks and the caboose
And I
is
thought that
here.
we had just discussed everything to where it made sense. And we met one-on-one, but I'll be more than happy to meet again next week, if that's what we need to do.
I would appreciate that. Actually, I think we had tentatively planned to schedule a meeting to discuss only the golf course, and that just didn't happen. So I would appreciate that.
We can do that. That way we don't have to keep drawing everyone in. So the next thing is the venue tax. If no more questions? Okay. The venue tax. We have budgeted $1.9 million. A transfer of $1 million to the general funds to again offset Parks and Rec's expenses. A transfer to the golf course of $101,800 to cover golf carts. And the remainder $800,000 of golf course CIP upon council approval. Again, if the golf course needs the money, we will use it. If it looks like we will be able to use revenue instead, well, that's what we'll do. But it's there available in the event it's needed. Thanks. And that's it. Thank you.
Any comments, questions, any directions?
Okay, so on August 5th, you'll see the actual budget presentation. The week before that, it needs to go to the city secretary. When we get our final copies to the city secretary, she'll forward them to you for our August 5th meeting. And on the August 5th meeting, we hope we will have, we will have the tax rate projection at that time.
When will the actual tax rates be in?
We will receive the
July 25th, we'll
25th on Saturday, Friday.
Final rolls. Final certified rolls. From there, we'll go out and figure out what the anticipated, expected, projected, accounted for ad valorem will be. We'll plunk that into the budget, and then we'll come back for the August 5th meeting, and we'll have that budget in place for you, still carrying on with the changes that we had discussed this evening. And then we'll post that out for the council and the public on July 31st. At the August 5th meeting, we're actually going to be presenting tax rates to council, and we'll provide some options for that. And then on August 19th, we will have a budget hearing and a record vote on the tax rate. Those are your next steps.
I'd just like to thank you. I had to come in for 2 meetings with them to understand what we're doing up here, and then with Mr. Mitz's numbers sent me off the tracks. And I appreciate the time that you give us to explain. Thank you.
Excellent, yeah, just fine.
That's one more thing. I put some comments on the message board if anybody wants to go read, but I do like the budget. There's some things you did here that I really appreciate. So I think we're on good footing. I'm a little worried about the tax rate, so we might have to make some tweaks once we get those numbers, but that's all. Thank you.
Any final words? Thank you ever so much. Excellent presentation. Workshop adjourned. It is 6:44.
We'll find something.